Hello guys, so in today's video we'll talk about the variables in the JavaScript. So let's start. So variables. So in simple terms, a variable is a name given for the data stored in the memory. The data will be stored in the memory and the name given to that particular data that is stored is called as a variable. Why we call it a variable? Because the value that is stored in the memory could change during the execution of the program. That's why we call it as a variable. So in JavaScript, in order to create the variables, we use var, let and const declarations. So let us see the example. The example is let message is equal to good morning. So this message is the name of the variable and let is the declaration and good morning is a value that is stored in the memory. So using the message we will be able to get this particular value, let good morning. So we use the let. Why we use the let, we'll be understanding it later, but for most of the time we will use the let for variables in the JavaScript. We could also use var, but it is recommended to use let. We will see. So in JavaScript, if you declare multiple variables, you will get an error. Identifier has been already declared. Once it is declared, it can be changed, but you cannot redeclare it. So in order to change it, you need not to write it let again. You can just with the value name, you can change the value, you can assign the value. We will see all those. This is the declaring variables twice using let causes an error. Identifier redeclared. So let us see some of the naming conventions. Like we have to name the variables properly, and there are some rules also in order to name the variables. So the name should contain only letters, digits, symbols like dollar and underscore. The first character should be not be a digit. That means the first character which you are using, it should not be a digit. It should start with other than digit. So let us see some valid variables. This is a valid and this is also valid. Let us see some invalid variables. So this is invalid because according to this particular rule, it should not start with a digit and it should not contain any symbols other than these two, dollar and underscore. It contains a dash, which this is not a proper name. It could contain this underscore, but since it contains a dash, it is not a proper variable. Variable names cannot be from the keyword reserved keywords. There are some reserved keywords, like in any programming language you have for loop, for while, if, switch. Those are the keywords which you cannot use in your variables naming, right? You should also keep this point or else you will get an error. So let us talk about the constants. Constants are those which value doesn't change after their declaration and assignment, right? So in order to declare constant, use the keyword const instead of let. Till now which we are using for variables, just replace it by the const and name of the variable, and this is the value of the variable. When we are sure that variable value never changes after the assignment, we could use the const. Once it is declared and assigned, its value won't change. If you try to change it, you will get an error. So the advantage with const is that when you declare only, there itself you need to assign, right? You can just declare it and leave. You have to assign it there itself. So the assignment could happen there itself by hard coding, or it could happen during the execution of the program, right? So sometimes we see that the constants are having the name which are in capitals, but you will also see the constant with this lowercase. What are these? So the values which you know upfront, so you could write them in uppercase like this and give them the value. And the constants which you don't know, but they are constants, once they are declared, their value won't change. That means their value is uh, assigned during the execution of the program. Then only then you can use the name. So let us see. Okay, so when we write the code, we will look that code afterwards also. So after some time or some days also. So when we name the variables properly, by just looking at the name, we will be able to see why they are declared and why they are used. So when we declare a variable, its name should be clean, obvious, and should indicate the data stored in it. The naming should be like that. By seeing the name itself, you need to know what value it stores. In case of a real project, variable name plays a key role the the because we may work on a feature, and after some days when we come back and see the variables that are used in that feature, if we don't understand it properly, it becomes very hard. So variable naming is very key. So never give abbreviations like short names like xyz. Don't give xyz unless you know it. Like giving the name as x, it won't make any sense. So you should give a proper variable naming. So now let us look at the examples and practice so that we will understand what we have seen. So we have seen that we could use the let declaration in order to create a variable. So we have created the variable whose name is message and its value is good morning. So let's console log that and see. So good morning is printed onto the console. So we also saw that we cannot do this redeclaration of the variable. This is not allowed. This is not allowed in the JavaScript using the let declaration. You would get an error identified message has already been declared. So you could change the value, you cannot redeclare it using the let declarations. So instead of this, you could just simply change the value. The value will be changed and good evening is now printed. Earlier it was good morning. And we also saw that you could declare the constant using the const declaration, and so as my name doesn't change, so I am using the const. So if you know that a variable won't never or it won't change during the execution of the program, you could use the constants. If the variable value changes, you could go with the let declaration. Let's console log that and see. So Bhanu Prathap. So sometimes in the JavaScript, you would see the variables with the uh, uppercase and some variables with the lowercase. So don't confuse. You could use the variables with the uppercase when you know the value upfront. That means you know the value before your execution of the program itself, like hexacolor values, some those type of values which are hard to remember. You can hard code them, and you could store them. In those cases, you would use the uppercase and the constants whose value is determined during the execution. That means when the program is executed, when during that time, you could use this lower casing. So that is all about the const. And we also talked that the variable naming should be proper. That means, look, if I write this program, close it, and after 2 to 3 days come and I see this variable. So by the name itself, by the name of the variable itself, I'm able to get what it stores. Name, that means it stores someone's name, like this would able to get. So if it is const age, mm, age can't be constant, it should be let. So whenever I come and see after some time or some days, by the name of the variable itself, I am getting what it stores. So age means it stores age of a person, like that. The variable naming should be like that. By the variable name itself, you should be able to figure out what is stored, or at least you should get idea why it, what it can store. That's it, guys. So this is all about. Let's just revise, or let's do some kind of summary so that we'll get a proper understanding of all. So let us see the summary. So we have seen that the variable declarations can happen with the var, let, and const. So we have seen let and const. We'll later talk about the var. So let is preferred over var. We will talk it is in the future videos. We will see why let is preferred over the var and what are the advantages of the let over the var. So const is used for constant declarations. So variables should be named properly so that we can understand the data present in them. So this is a very important point. So that's it guys. So thank you for watching video. Like the video, and if you found there is a playlist I'm making, you could watch all the videos. That's it. Thank you.